independent school district to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this workshop has been duly called, and that the notice of this workshop has been posted in accordance with Texas Opens Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551. Let's see, Chris. Because the next thing is audience participation. So we have a few folks in here. Maybe. Anybody sign up to speak?
I signed up to speak at the regular meeting.
Okay. No. Okay. So I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
So Dr. Moore.
It's your resident.
All right.
Thank you.
So you can start, and I'll say there and sign up.
Oh, okay.
So you can
Already
I asked the folks that were in the room, did they sign up to speak?
Perfect.
All right. Dr. Moore.
All right. So first off, I wanted to update you on 21-22 budget and the year projections, and then we'll get into the weeds a little bit on 22 and 23. Okay? See if you guys have any questions. Talk out some possibilities for the future. So as a reminder, you'll see on the left side of the page there, we adopted this year a $121.7 million budget. With the uncertainties associated with student enrollment growth, hold harmless from last year and things of that nature, we utilized a committed fund balance to help protect the district in the case that we didn't hit our mark. And so ultimately we set aside $2.5 million in case we needed it. And you'll see the end of year projections on the far right. With the student enrollment growth, you'll see a substantial increase in the state program revenues. From the estimate of $44 million, going up to $46.6. Okay. We've added some expenses on the instructional side for teaching positions, and the end product right now, we anticipate and project a balanced budget for year ending. Okay. So we're starting from scratch or from zero, which is a good place to be. So now let's start talking about 22, 23. Or sorry, are there any questions on that? No. Okay. So on 22-23, and I sent out some information sort of associated with this in terms of the approach for budget purposes the other day. Hopefully it didn't put you to sleep and you had a chance to look at it. But we're sort of in a different setting than we have been for many, many years as it relates to obviously our heavy anticipated student enrollment growth. In addition to that, under the current system, the only way or only mechanism to generate new or additional revenue is student enrollment growth. Right? We talked about that before. The inverse relationship between state aid and tax rate compression as well. So that number, that we build our budget on is very important. And in the current environment, it is darn near impossible not to project the total demographer projection, if you will, and still meet the needs of the district. But we believe that we need to be strategic with how we build that budget in terms of trying to limit recurring costs, but also remain competitive with salaries. That makes sense strategically. So anyhow, and so we'll look at what, so how we compare with some of the teacher pay and things of that nature, and then I'll bring it back to the budget. I'm sorry, I have one more slide here. So right now, the demographer projects 650 student growth for our district, okay? We receive right now in total funding, local plus state, approximately $8,400 per student, which means that for general funding purposes, we're generating an extra $5.5 million for 22-23, okay? In addition to that, we know that we're going to have a slight increase on the federal fund side for SHARD reimbursement. And we anticipate some expenditure savings for all medical purposes on the expenditure side of things, okay? So, in very simple terms, what that means is that we had a total of about $6.3 million to begin working with for 22-23, okay? We've already added to date approximately $3.1 million worth of expenses, in large part to respond to current overflow in some of our elementary classrooms that have exceeded 22-1, catching up, if you will. And the anticipated growth we have for next year, okay, for new teaching positions. I think most of you have seen this, but we've also had to be very creative, of course, for attracting folks in this tough environment. So we've added hiring bonuses, referral bonuses, and things of that nature. So in addition to that, and sort of following suit with what some other districts are doing, this package does increase the minimum wage on the manual trade side from approximately $9.26 to $10 an hour, and on the clerical technical side from approximately $10 an hour to $11 an hour. Okay. And then we're also going to increase bus driver pay because of the difficulties there with attracting and retaining folks. We're anticipating an extra $1 per hour for those folks, and increasing the minimum from $17.34 to $19. Okay, questions on that?
And what group of employees is that?
That's the bus driver.
Bus drivers.
Yes, ma'am. And I'll hit on every group and
Then we'll continue to do the free meals and childcare for them?
yes, ma'am. So basically what we have to work with after you take out what we've already had to sort of apply for the expenditure side is about $3.2 million. Okay, so that's our number. Keep a note that we do have $2,000 for one-time incentive pays set aside from federal stimulus money. Okay, so that is a separate item that we already have budgeted. Okay, any questions on that? So let's start. Go ahead.
Just curious, we don't get 650 students.
So I've sort of
That's
yeah.
$2 million.
So let me go through this real quick, Gary, and we'll talk more about it. That is the.
Don't think that hasn't caused a lot.
It's caused a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
Because as you all know, I mean,
It's a
in
cloudy
in the old system, we were able to take advantage of property value growth with a small increase in minimum funding. And it's not the same in the current environment, so you almost have to, but you know, looking at us historically, I mean, we've never projected more than a few hundred students. Now, we're in a different environment now. I mean, we're up 650, and that is far more than any other, you know, time frame, at least since 2008. So there was one year that we jumped out there a little bit more aggressive, and we had a reduction in ADA. So that is, like Dr. Stevens said, that's a $10 million question, but you know, I think there's a balance there where we can be comfortable and also protect the district from incurring costs if we don't get it, and we'll talk about some of that.
So Eric, will you, just for everybody, will you explain how M&O, how that tax rate works as the value of homes goes up? So you control the value of
Yes, sir,
homes.
absolutely, and that's actually more complicated this year than it has been for us, but as a general rule, since HB 1525, we've had, or actually HB 3, we've had M&O tax rate compression that limits the district to 2.5% overall revenue growth when you add in property taxes and state aid. So we're forced to decrease in the M&O tax rate as the property values increase. That's the simple part. This year, I don't get too much on it, but this year it's a little bit different for us because within the law it says that districts, there can't be a greater variance than 10% for tax rate compression purposes. Okay, from state average to any other district, or you're looking at 90% to 110. So even though our property values are going up substantially, we can only go down on the M&O tax rate a few pennies without losing revenue, because we have to stay close enough to state average, if that makes sense. But in simple terms, tax rate compression goes down as your tax values go up. So, yes, sir. And then the other component is, of course, our debt service, which we have some flexibility on, which has to meet our current year debt requirements. So what are other districts doing? How do we compare teacher-wise? Obviously, we look at those comparisons every year. I sort of have quite a bit going on in this one spreadsheet here, but try to show a comparison between us, state average for same-size districts, and then some of our local competitors in terms of how we compare at step one teacher, or first year teacher, 10-year teacher, and 20-year teacher. And then on the right side, you'll see the district's contribution for health insurance purposes and the employee out of pocket for each one of those districts as well. Okay? So, when you're looking at this, obviously we compare well at the step one mark, 55,000. We anticipate that going up to 56.5 this coming year. We sort of lose some of that comparison a bit closer to the 10-year mark and gain some of it back at the 20-year mark. In terms of what other districts are doing, you can see at the bottom of the page here some of our friends, if you will. Conroe is giving an approximate raise for teachers of 2.5%, 2% for all other employees, and they're doing a total of $1,500 worth of bonuses. Montgomery ISD is giving $2,000 for teachers, which is approximately 3.5%, 3% for all other employees, and two $500 bonuses. Tomball is giving a 4% raise for all employees with no bonuses anticipated. Okay.
And there's no like, nobody else is in a unique bubble. They're all fighting the same issues we are, and
It's
it
exactly
all
the same.
gets driven by those kids at some point.
So-
And so there's some people out on some shaky limbs. If
Well,
you start watching what's
yes,
going
sir,
on.
to Gary's question, I mean, again, given that that's the only mechanism in lieu of the to generate additional revenue, I mean, those districts are having to reach out there. If you're giving 4%, which is all recurring expenses, you've got to reach out there for student enrollment growth purposes. Now, the Tomballs and the Conroes of the world, they've sort of been living this fast growth thing for years, right? Whereas it's relatively new for us. So I think we developed a plan that's cautious, but it's competitive, and I'll show you that in just a moment as well.
So is Tomball still getting more per child?
We've actually narrowed that, Chuck, and it's about even. Yes, sir. With all the Band-Aids from year after year, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
So 5 of the 7, if you want to call them competing districts, 5 of the 7 other districts have higher salaries than we do.
Yes, sir, and of course, Bryan College Station, but they're a little different with the youngsters that they can attract there from Agawam. They don't pay near as much, but they do well with health insurance contributions. So yes, sir. And like I showed, and I cut off, but Conroe is going step 0 to 60,000, and Montgomery is going to 56.2. And again, our plan is to go to 56.5, which keeps us slightly ahead of Montgomery, and within $1,000 of Tomball starting teacher. So there was a time where that gap was much more substantial. Now we focused on that front end, and yet in doing so, without breaking the bank year after year, I mean, it has consolidated the amount at tenure that we're behind some.
But I know it doesn't apply to everybody, obviously, but insurance and child care, I mean, all
Oh,
that's
yes,
a lot
sir.
of.
Yes, sir.
We got to put that in our sales pitch, and I'm sure you do.
No, sir, and we will, and again, I think we've got something that's competitive, and I'll talk a little bit about health insurance, but I know it's been a large topic of discussion. But you see what we contribute now. Conroe is on a self-funded plan, and they pay a lot more, but their people pay more too. That employee contribution is based on an employee-only plan at the high deductible. Okay. So again, we compare well. Obviously, Bryan College Station's ahead of us, but they don't really pay anything. So remember that. Okay, so with health insurance, and I don't go through in detail. I think you all remember, but we were forced into making a decision with Senate Bill 1444. We took the conservative approach. We took the approach that 90% of the districts in the state of Texas did. Okay, so, and we opted into the TRS plan. The good news is that the governor's using federal stimulus dollars to decrease the cost of health insurance. So I'll show you that in just a moment, but that's a good thing. The other thing I think that's important for us is, there are some advantages. We have the alt medical plan, or had it, it will expire in August, but you know, there are some favorable things in terms of rates with it as it relates to the current TRS rates, okay? But, and I'll show you in just a second, with what was being recommended by our insurance TPA, and just the known from being behind in terms of claims and having a couple of tough, difficult years, we know that those costs were going to go up substantially. Okay, so I think that's important. So I'll show you that right here. So this shows the current all medical rates and the recommended rates for 22-23. It shows the current TRS rates for 21-22 and the adopted TRS rates for 22-23. Just for information purposes, on the left-hand side, you'll see the number of people that we have on this plan. The other thing is we talk about health insurance versus compensation versus bonuses, et cetera, keeping in mind that about 66% of our employees are on health insurance. Okay? So, 66%. Yes, ma'am. So, if you look in the far right column, you'll see a comparison of what the actual TRS rates are for next year versus the recommended or projected rates for our alt medical. And so, I mean, you're going to see a trend there that's positive in nature. So, you know, with what the governor is willing to do with the federal stimulus dollars and decreasing those rates, and you can see the decrease from TRS to TRS, it's meaningful. And I mean, it's going to help us with that transition.
There's a little competition market will do, right?
Whatever it's taking right now.
Right. Suddenly we become
Yes, ma'am.
competitive.
So, and of course we can get into a lot of discussion about this, but as I mentioned before, strategic approach, you know, we have no problem projecting 650 student growth. What we have a problem with is if we establish all recurring costs associated with that and we miss the mark. And if we miss the mark, it means that we start way behind the following year, which has a compounding effect, okay? So, what we're looking at is we're trying to give a reasonable compensation package to our folks, and I'll show the comparison in just a moment. So, at this point, we're looking at a 2% raise for all employees and adding another $750 out of the general fund in one-time bonuses, okay? So, what that means is that we protected the district with that amount. If we don't hit our target, we can use fund balance to pay for it, and it's a one-time expense. Does that make sense? So if you look at the bottom, here's a couple of examples, guys, and to your question, Gary. So what if we hit 450 students? That means we have a balanced budget for recurring costs, right? And the additional bonus amount of 750 comes out of fund balance. We begin the following year balanced, okay? Other scenario is hitting 650 or above that mark, and that is certainly possible. You know, the market for interest rates and things of that nature is challenging right now. But if we hit 650, then basically we can use that disparity between current year recurring cost and the budget for the one-time expense to basically assume an immediate 2% raise for the following year, which means that we can come back and be conservative with enrollment projections and probably get more like a 4% the following year, right? And the ESSER money runs out for bonus purposes after this year. Okay? So, again, what we're looking at, we're talking about a 2% raise for all employees and a total of $2,750 in one-time incentive pays. When you put that to scale in terms of percentage effect and monetary effect as it relates to our peers and what they're doing, you'll see for a $30,000 employee percentage-wise, that's a total compensation package increase of 11%. And yet we're protecting the district for about $1.7 million. Okay? For teachers, $60,000 teacher is 7%, and then you can see the monetary comparison.
So Eric, I noticed, if my math is right, the fund balance is like 30%.
It is closer to 35. Yes, sir.
Well, okay.
35.
So when you say balanced, are you trying to dip into that a little bit?
Well, if we have to, I mean, we're not planning for it, but ultimately, if we land less than 650, we will have to.
So that
And that's why-
some odd example
Yes, sir.
did send you a little bit.
That's correct, yes, sir. And basically what we're saying is that we're willing to do that for one-time cost.
Sure.
What we're not willing to do is reach out there and get a 5% raise that's all recurring
We're all
costs.
clear. We don't go ahead and set a student enrollment figure at 650. We can't play with this kind of money in revenues. I mean, we could get real conservative and back that back down. We can't do any of this kind of thing for our people. So it does let us play, we have to play that game a little bit on potential fund balance if we don't hit 650, like we were talking
So,
about here. And so I think what we're saying is, with a healthy fund balance and the potential of that type of growth happening again this year, it's probably worth a gamble, unless you guys want to entertain the ultra-conservative deal, which means we would have to back that number down. But then you got to pull revenue out of this, and unless you're handing it out of fund balance.
So if we
Or
did
ten
build a
percent
base.
above, if
Yes.
it's 35,
If
or
we did-
10% above, so.
If we didn't base it on 650, I mean, and we reduce that number, then we would be planning to utilize fund balance for the one-time payment. So,
I mean, the worst case, we did a little, we're 10% over.
Yeah,
what the-
either way, you're gonna hit. So-
well, and I think it's smart to commit to the same
We got
fund
money,
balance
fund
for the
balance.
fast growth study, specifically for that.
And in the strategy that Eric's laid out here too, using the one-time bonuses, it protects us in the long run. I mean, it becomes a one-time expense for that part of it, and then it resets, because that's not a reoccurring expense on those bonuses.
And,
The salary reoccurring part is only 2%.
and by year end of this year, how many additional students did we get? Because it was more than we thought.
Close to 650, it's a little over 600.
So
So again,
higher
that's the
than
demographer projection. I talked to our in-house person. She says she feels no reason to believe that we won't at least hit that mark. But it's a little different than what we're used to.
In the
I mean,
bond committees, we had our financial people in there, we had demographers in there. We asked everybody, did anybody give us a crystal ball as to, will this growth continue? Could it be slowed by the economic conditions? And, you know, we got a lot of, no, it's hard to stop this growth once it gets started. It's probably going to continue. You never know for sure. But I mean, and we talked about, well, the interest rate's going to have a deal on the housing market. Well, you know, this money seems to be coming in. So I don't know. I'm very cautious and concerned that it will continue. But I think this gives us a soft landing in worst case scenarios on some things.
And so it's like the demographer has said many times, guys, that, you know, I mean, you can't really guarantee that in any given year, you're gonna grow 600 or 700 students. What you can most likely guarantee is 3 to 5 years from now, you will be around a certain mark. So for budget purposes, I mean, you know, I mean, you may not hit it, but as long as we're protecting the district, and
We talked about it before, but on fund balance, can you review that again as far as what percent we shoot for, where we are? How far from that we're-
so in board policy, we have it set at a minimum of 2.5 months. Our goal is to maintain 3, and so we're easily above that at this point. I say easily, it's like 35.
Probably 4 months.
Well, and
Close.
3.5, it's about 3.57, I think.
that also gives us favorable interest rates. when we go out to
Absolutely, it's
the-
important.
Yeah.
And of course,
I see that you're,
you know, we added almost 5 million this past year, so it's higher than it ever has been, so.
2.5 months, but kind of the gold standard is 3 months. So we're still.
We're almost at 4.
I can tell you firsthand, the houses in the young family bring children to our schools market are under contract before they are activated online right
Is that
now.
right?
You can't find somebody a house for 400 or less. So those are your family homes that are bringing kids to our schools. So I don't see that slowing at the moment.
I think the fund balance
So we're
cushion
not
gives
above
us,
that.
It does.
gives
And
us,
so if we hit that mark,
comfort.
we've still got quite a bit of money in our folks' hands this year with a different approach, and we're set the following year.
Mhm. We like safety nets.
it's hard to play catch up.
Right.
If we back that number down any, I can't see us doing it any less than to give a 2% raise, and that's all this really puts us on, you know, a long-term feel for, so I
Especially
think it's a
since
very creative way, and it puts money in our people's hands. And we've heard so many good comments about the bonuses that they really, you know, they're not used to seeing money like that in those sort of chunks and.
And we time them.
Yeah, we time them.
We were thinking
Right
about
when it's most
7:50 on
impactful.
September 1st and then.
Yeah,
and then-
we'll have some early and then, you know,
Right.
proceed.
Especially if 5 of the 7 districts around us are higher, this offsets this, right?
Yeah.
In large degree. So to the tax rate, again, I mean, we know that M&O will compress. Right now, we anticipate that it's a little less than 3 cents, it's about 2.5. So if you look at that where we were, back when 506, of course, it was $1.79. And then we'll have to look at the debt service. What's up next, guys? July workshop if needed, certified values on July 25th. Spoke with Tony Bill and Austin 2 days ago, and there's right at $2 billion worth under protest. Which is the
You
highest
just
ever.
Count mine on it. That or they can write
That
me a
number
check.
seems
It will
low
be
to
done.
me.
To large degree,
It's like,
like,
holy
funding
smokes, is it?
it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, and then we'll meet again first week of August as well, to talk about approved tax rate and set the official time for a public hearing. So, I'm gonna do that really quick. Is there anything we need to? Put that over?
Any questions?
I think it's still conservative.
Yeah, no, and you have to, you know, I mean, you have to do it.
I mean, even 7 and 11%.
You wanna do the
I think
right
we're
thing,
conservative
but
still.
you still have to be conservative because it can bite you. And then next year, you'd be looking at people going, sorry,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I think in this climate too, when we're having so much trouble, everybody's
Sure.
having trouble hiring teachers. in
Oh, yeah,
particular.
that's right.
Our classrooms full. You've got to look at it in this lens and say, well, you know, if our fund balance was a lot lower than this, I would probably have maybe a little reservation, but since our fund balance is so healthy, I would say, we got to take care of the teachers, we got to attract the teachers. I think this is.
We can't get behind them. I think there are districts doing
We work
things
too hard to get where we.
that they can't really afford to do, but it's also, if we don't, we can attract teachers.
Right.
And so I see some things that are just, how are you doing that? How are they doing that?
So is this well publicized, or will it be with the teachers? I mean, they need to understand this.
Before they
is
go out on,
And they see 2% versus.
We haven't
as we have had this.
No.
I mean, I'm just saying, will it
But
be?
after this, are we gonna?
Well,
be
not
able
until
to-
actually we don't have this to vote on. If y'all think this is the direction we need to kind of keep moving, or we'll kind of keep moving with some of this but until we either adopt a compensation plan or the budget, I mean, yeah, it's not gonna get.
Can we at least let them know this is what we're thinking, because that.
I'm only saying for
folks
recruiting
to
purposes,
leave.
right? I know it's not official, we haven't approved it.
A lot of folks who came out fast with big numbers.
Right,
Yes.
yeah.
When have we told them in the past, has it been?
Typically at the, when we did
It sort of
the
depends
teacher
on the year.
appreciation.
A lot of those
Just don't
folks who
have to
jump out
put it
there
out
early,
there.
they got July 1 fiscal years too, so they have to.
They had to get, and you know, we did want to see what the insurance, a lot of people were coming out with those numbers and they hadn't even released what TRS was gonna be. So we just were trying to be a little concerned. We wanted more information before we kind of, it's all part of the compensation package for our people, you know. So I'm with you though. I want them to know, but until we get it approved, we can probably give them some idea where it seems
Well, I
to be
think
headed.
from a strategic standpoint, from a hiring standpoint,
You gotta
you know, you might want to let the
something.
ones that
Yeah.
aren't here yet know, this is what we're planning on doing, as soon as we can.
Right.
Well, it'd be something we could do that way. I know
Right.
we haven't approved it, I get all that, but recruiting is important.
Exactly.
They've got to somehow feel what we're doing here. Because if they think we're lower than anybody else,
Yeah, this is what we're looking at, however you need to phrase it. But they need to know, because you don't want folks leaving and not.
So no, like this has been
And you
presented,
want to hire new.
Or hire.
Yeah, trying to hire new.
There you go.
it's been presented
Our
before,
first
like this,
budget
we're working
workshop.
through the
Yeah,
workshop.
this is what's
Right, this
been
was what was
presented.
presented.
We're keeping moving forward with, you know,
Yeah.
reducing the
We have
budget.
media here too, so.
Yeah,
Do
'cause-
what?
We have some media, right?
Yeah, because there are people
Yeah, well, they want to
who
know.
rolled out
rather than-
already, and people waiting to go in.
If you're saying I'm a teacher of Young and Magnolia,
Mhm. Well, and look at what prices are doing around it. So if you got nothing, you're behind, you're behind compared to the previous
I
year.
haven't heard anyone at this table yet express concern about this direction.
And the incentive pay, you know, we received positively the last couple of times.
Been very,
So we'd be looking at doing it in a couple chunks again?
Yes, ma'am.
Like last
like right after school starts.
We talked about
Oh, it
doing
is.
750 on September 1st, and then 1,000 November 15th, and another 1,000 before spring break.
Just before the holidays and just before spring break.
But we can do it however.
No,
I
Give
like
somebody
those.
2,750, that's
Those
meaningful.
are impactful.
Before Christmas.
Yes.
Those are impactful.
bonus is always nice.
Well, we'll continue our work then.
Any other questions?
Does it matter from a budget standpoint for us what time of year we give the bonuses, if we split it up 10 times or 1 time?
We just need to do a resolution beforehand, so we'll not be able to get all three of them knocked out in August this year.
Anything else? Good stuff. You got Eric, got the man.
That's good stuff.
Wrap it up.
Well, and I think with the growth we've seen this past year. and
Well,
we've
it makes it
seen-
easier.
It makes it
It's
easier.
just a new environment for us a little bit, but, you know, we were very strategic this year in getting fund balance that we're not having to use because we surpassed our mark, so.
And we've all seen.
I think it's conservative, yes.
I mean, you
I
just
mean,
look
drive
for-
down the road.
Just
Your
say, just get in your
EDA
car.
is just, yeah.
I don't sell many,
I see it slowing down, they're building them as quick as they can.
Is that interest rates keep creeping up, and they're going to. Simple mind, he says, it's gonna slow the number of people that are able to get in. I mean, a lot of these people have been in the pipeline before that 5-point bump hit. And there's several, there are 2 more I keep hearing. I don't know whether they'll stay their word to it, but that's got to, that scares me.
That's what it's
I just
designed
scares
to
me
do.
that all this stuff is
That's what
rushing
it's
into
intended
Right.
for.
Yeah,
Audubon
but
listings
really-
just started hitting the market, so.
I get it, and there's a lot of people that aren't, those are sold, I mean, they're waiting on to deliver,
Mhm.
you know?
We went up in there to go look at, where that elementary site is. And I didn't think I'd ever get back out, because we were trying to get out across on our house. And I
Oh, I
bet we sat
know.
there for 5-10 minutes.
And you know, like I said, we gotta try to put teachers on the ground to cover that type of growth, because if the growth comes ahead of the teaching, because in the other days, we used to try to hire the teachers mid-year, and they were there. Good ones, there's no one there now. So we gotta go try to get whoever we can get now, and we're trying to staff somewhat close to that number. And, and then obviously, I can't I'm not willing to start having second thoughts about a bond deal. We're gonna have to get ahead of that building curve on all that, but it's just, it's an unusual time with how, I think, shaky the economy seems to be on some issues, and I certainly hope it keeps rolling right along, but I don't know, I'm concerned.
And you can't wait till August to recruit.
No.
No,
It's a little late.
Little bit late.
At that point,
We
you're
have some of our
done.
hiring bonuses up to $6,000-8,000.
Yeah,
I saw some of those, yeah.
So, I mean,
People,
we're pretty aggressive with those.
When you say 35%, is that including what is likely to roll out of this year into that fund balance?
Right now, we're not anticipating that. So. There might be, right now, I'm projecting.
It's
It's
not-
always,
it's
yeah.
not-
Won't be
it's not-
punished, no,
Kids
sir.
will show up.
No, sir.
all right?
Very good. So, everybody's good. I need a motion that we adjourn this workshop. Motion by Gary, seconded by Christie. All in favor? Motion carries.